the best teams to rebuild in Madden 23. We're less than a month away from the release, and I got you covered. In this video, we're going to talk about the 5 best teams to rebuild when you get your hands on the game. Let's talk about it. So by now, hopefully everyone is aware and knows that all the Madden ratings are out. Madden also went through and gave us pretty much all the team ratings, and they sorted these into overall rating, defensive, offensive, and special teams so that you can kind of sort and get a good idea of what teams are best and what teams are worst in a particular category. Now, I'm not going to do the most obvious teams. We know the Texans, we know the Seahawks are probably going to be the 2 favorite teams to rebuild in Madden 23. They've got the most holes. They don't have an answer at quarterback unless you think Drew Lock or David Mills is your answer at quarterback, and I highly doubt you think that. I mean, at best, you probably could get them to an 80 to 85 overall if you cheese the XP sliders and you're not playing on a hard difficulty. But even then, you're not really probably going to have a superstar caliber quarterback, and you're going to look very soon for one. So we're not going to talk about them. So the first team that I think is probably going to be one of the most fun rebuilds is going to be the Chicago Bears. And reason being, if we look here at the offensive rating, there's only one team that is worse than the Chicago Bears in offense, and that is the New York Giants. The Bears are a 69, great number, right? A 69 in offensive rating. Now, defense, they're 75. They do have some good players like Roquan Smith on the defense that can help solidify a team, and Roquan Smith is a absolute stud. Now, for Madden, he's been kind of disrespected, but in that same vein, he is a great player to build around on that defensive side of the ball. And then, of course, at quarterback, you got Justin Fields. Now, the only problem with the Bears on offense is that they have no talent around Justin Fields other than David Montgomery. And here's the list of all the players for the Bears in Madden. You see Roquan Smith there with an 89, should be at least a 90. But the first offensive player you see here is David Montgomery at an 84. And he's a running back, and we all know running backs in Madden, really not a valuable position. And then the first guy you've got coming up is Darnell Mooney. The wide receiver position for Justin Fields is abysmal. The Bears do not have an answer. Their offensive line is not very great at all. Of course, running back is nothing to, there's no one there that you really are going to be excited about, maybe like a Derrick Henry or a Nick Chubb or Christian McCaffrey. So you got a lot of work cut out for you. And as a side note, I am going to be doing a franchise rebuild on the Chicago Bears because they're my favorite team to do. So if you're interested in that, make sure to subscribe down below and turn those notifications on so that when I do start running with the Bears franchise, you are in the know. I can't wait to get started. It's going to be fun. I like to make things as realistic as possible, and I hope that you come along for the ride. All right, the second team that I think is going to be really fun to build around is going to be the Atlanta Falcons. Now, oddly enough, the Falcons have one of the best special teams groups in the NFL, according to Madden, and 81 overall. That's what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's a 6, or tied for 6 with the Cardinals and the Broncos. So, hey, I mean, I guess Cordell Patterson there, helps out a little bit with that. But you do see only a 71 in offense and a 73 in defense. And that is just right behind one of the teams that we were talking about with the Bears on offense. And then if we look at defense, they are the 3rd worst rated defense in Madden, but they do have some talented players. I mean, of course, we talked about Cordell Patterson. I do think Marcus Mariota is a quarterback that you can run with for a while. I personally would just go ahead and run with Desmond Ridder, but let's not forget about AJ Terrell there on the outside. Having a good lockdown corner is really hard to find in Madden, especially through the draft. So you already got somebody there that you ain't got to worry about going forward. You got somebody in AJ Terrell there that can lock it down on the secondary side of things. And another thing to remember is that the NFC South really does not have an answer at quarterback outside of potentially maybe Carolina with Matt Corral and Baker Mayfield or Sam Darnold or whatever, but maybe James Winston in New Orleans. But if you can get a young, good quarterback in Desmond Ridder to take off, we all know that Tom Brady's going to retire eventually, that you are primed to be the leader of that division for the foreseeable future. So if we look at some of these players here, we already talked about AJ Terrell on the defense. Casey Hayward, also another good opposite corner to go alongside AJ Terrell. You've got Kyle Pitts. You've got Calvin Ridley if you want to play him, but if you want to keep things realistic, you probably need to sit him for that first year, right? Cordell Patterson is okay. So there's some players that you can build around. Really what you need to work around is the front 7 of the defense and the offensive line of the Atlanta Falcons. And then you want to build, of course, that quarterback room, whether you want to go with Marcus Mariota or if you want to go with the rookie Desmond Ridder. And personally, with Marcus Mariota being a 71, Desmond Ridder being a 70, I think their speed is both the same. Like, why not just go ahead and run with the rookie? All right, so my third favorite team to rebuild is the Jacksonville Jaguars. And now I know you say, hold on. I mean, they've got Trevor Lawrence. They've had a plethora of draft picks. They should be set, right? And they're 76 defensive rating, which is not that bad. I mean, it's still bottom tier, but for a young defense, it's not that bad, but they're still like bottom 10. The problem here is they're only a 73 on the offensive side of the ball and then a 68 on special teams. And do you think Trevor Lawrence is the answer at quarterback? That's going to be my answer to you. And if you think no, then I do think the Jacksonville Jaguars will be a fun team to rebuild. Maybe you could potentially trade him at the end of his 4-year contract. You could run these next 3 years, see what happens, and then trade him. But outside of that, they have a pretty decent offensive line. They've got a young, talented defense. They have some talented players at the secondary, but there are just so many answers and question marks on this team, especially with all their young players. How are they going to develop and grow? You know, what is Trayvon Walker going to look like? And that's another reason you get to work with the #1 pick from the last few drafts with Trevor Lawrence and Trayvon Walker. So do you want to develop those guys and let those be the mainstay on your defense and offense, the guys to build around? And what do you do after that? So I think the Jacksonville Jaguars are kind of a sleeper team. A lot of people are probably going to forget about them because they think that they're kind of rebuilding a lot. And I don't think they are as solidified as maybe another team like the New York Jets. But I do think it would be a fun team to rebuild for Madden 23. The fourth team that I think is going to be really fun to rebuild is going to be the New York Giants. And I've already done a rebuild, them completely modded, by the way. It's a lot different than what Madden 22 was initially. There's a lot of more AI changes, logic, draft logics increased. It's something fun to watch maybe for the time being until Madden 23 comes out. But the Giants, as you see here, are the worst offensively rated team in Madden. And rightfully so. They don't have an answer at quarterback. Saquon Barkley, you know, he is a good running back, but I mean, really great, talented, but he stays injured a lot. And if we look at some of these players, these first few players, all these players are consistently getting injured. And even in Madden, trust me, I know, I ran this franchise. Adoree Jackson stays hurt. Saquon stays hurt. Sterling Shepard, Kenny Galladay, I mean, Kadarius Toney, Blake Martinez. So, I mean, like 80% of their top players, their top 10 players are going to get hurt. And you might want to look at go ahead and rebuilding them, moving them on. And then, of course, I mean, what's the answer at quarterback for them? Now, they do have a young, talented offensive line in Evan Neal, Andrew Thomas. I really do like that. But outside of that, you got Kayvon Thibodeau on the defensive side of things, who's a very fun player to rebuild with. I mean, if you go through all of these players, there's just not anyone great whatsoever. So do you want to run with Tyrod Taylor? Do you want to run with Daniel Jones? Do you want to get rid of both of them and go ahead and trade them and just crash this year? The New York Giants are going to be a team, I think, for next Madden that is going to be a lot like the Seahawks and Texans was the years prior. All right, and the fifth team that I think is going to be fun to rebuild, one that I'm going to switch up on you. They're not a bad team. They're actually really good, but I think that they would be a very surprising rebuild and a fun one to do, and that is the Pittsburgh Steelers. So the Pittsburgh Steelers are an 80 overall. They're an 87 defense, which is tied for third as the best defense in Madden. So you might say, well, I mean, come on, how can you rebuild them? But if we go and check out their offensive rating, they are the third worst offense. So it's kind of a Jekyll and Hyde thing. You know, you're going to be able to stop people on defense, but are you going to be able to score points? That's the real question here. And if we look at the ratings for each individual player, you've got TJ Watt here, of course, at a 96 overall, who I think was deserving of a 99 overall rating last year. I mean, he single-handedly pushed the Pittsburgh Steelers those last few games into the playoffs. I mean, he just disrupted things. Also, Minkah Fitzpatrick was also criminally discredited in Madden, so I think he's going to be a great one. But you've got Deontay Johnson, Najee Harris there. Najee Harris, you know, he's an 88 speed. He's a good running back in real life, man. I'm not really thinking that's going to be somebody that you want to go with. But then when we look at the quarterback position, Mitchell Trubisky, Kenny Pickett, do you really think that either one of those quarterbacks can grow and be something that can carry your franchise for the foreseeable future? I mean, we look at Mitchell Trubisky, who's a 69 overall. And then if we go and look at Kenny Pickett, he's a 68. So it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough to grow with these quarterbacks. Again, if you got a good slider set, you're playing on a hard difficulty, you're trying to be realistic, it's going to be hard to score points in this franchise rebuild. So those are the 5 teams that I think are going to be the best to rebuild, or at least the most fun. Of course, you've got the Texans, you've got the Jets, you've got the Seahawks, and a plethora of other teams. I think maybe the Panthers would also be a fun one too. They're kind of like the Steelers, where they're not as good on defense, but they are talented in some key areas. That would be fun to rebuild. But you know, some of those teams have played out. I kind of wanted to switch it up a little bit for you guys, and I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, hit that like button. If you learned something new, make sure to subscribe so you never miss any of my videos. I'm gonna have a ton of Madden 23 content, sliders, tips and tricks, teams that rebuild, franchise rebuilds, franchise playthroughs, streams, all of it, guys. So cannot wait till Madden 23 comes out. It looks like it's going to be a better one than previous years, and I will catch everybody later. Peace out.